Prepping and survival lessons we can extract from the movie Civil War. Let's get to it. Civil War, one of my favorite types of dystopian films because of course it's very plausible. If you want to see my complete analysis of the overarching themes of the movie Civil War, go and check out that video in the description section below. In today's video, I'm going to be looking at the movie from a prepping point of view. What were some of the mistakes that the characters made, and what were some of the things that they did right? So let's get to it. Lesson number 1. Young people are incredibly naive, so listen to your elders. The boomer generation and even the Gen Xers to a certain extent, they remember when times were a little bit more difficult. They're not naive to the rigors and the dangers of this world. For that reason, everybody needs a boomer in their group when the crap hits the fan. One of my favorite characters in the movie was Sammy. Why? Because he basically foreshadowed every bad event that happened in the film. Here are some of Sammy's main points of advice. Number 1, sleep whenever you get a chance. We take for granted the fact that we can go to bed for 8 hours and wake up in a nice comfortable bed safe and secure. That won't be the case in the dystopian nightmare that awaits. Fuel up whenever you can. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie when our protagonists are just departing on their journey when they come across a gas station which seems to be under the control of some well-armed militia types. At this stage of the game, they're still quite proximate to what I call the green zones. Because remember, in the apocalypse, there's going to be green zones that are characterized by authoritarianism and tyranny, and red zones which are Mad Max lawlessness. As our characters descend into the Mad Max lawless world, at the beginning of their journey, they need to capitalize on any opportunity they can to barter and trade for the supplies that they're going to need for their journey. When they get to the gas station, the group is asked if they have a permit for gasoline, signifying that they are in fact still close to the green zone. They of course don't have a permit, but they do have press written alongside their truck. We're going to come to that later. Fortunately, they have something called Canadian dollars, which apparently in this universe is something that is sought after. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. Back to Sammy's life lessons. If guys are unloading a pile of dead bodies and they don't have uniforms, they're probably not good guys. Listen to your elders. And if some of your friends try to convince you that going to Washington, D.C. in the middle of a civil war where you know that they're shooting reporters on site, probably not a good mission to embark on. Unfortunately, Sammy, who has the best operational security mindset in the film, also known as OPSEC, was killed saving the lives of the people that he was babysitting. There's another scene in the film where our main characters stumble across this town where it seems as though they're completely isolated from the civil war that's going on. People are watering the grass and they're going about life as usual. Our lead protagonist, played by Kristen Dunst, naively suggests that maybe these people are insulated from the horrors of this dystopian world. Sammy, however, astutely observes that there are armed gunmen discreetly on the top of buildings, and that indeed there is no escape from this civil war. There's several other scenes in the movie where the wisdom of youth is contrasted with our elder character. I would encourage you, if you rewatch the film, pay attention to Sammy's insights. They might just save your ass when the grid goes down. Lesson number 7.2. Our society is very decadent, and we will continue to seek self-amusement to our own peril long after the apocalypse. If you think you're going to rise to the occasion and kick those bad drug habits, chances are you won't. Throughout the movie, the characters numb the pain of existing in this world by using several psychoactive substances such as marijuana, Ativan, and even alcohol. Most of those characters end up making very stupid decisions that get people killed, or they become highly dependent on the government to take care of them. There's a very symbolic scene in the film where you have a bunch of people who are getting help from relief workers, and they're all living in tent cities inside a stadium, but they're all passing around alcohol and partying. For me, this scene is so profound. Not only do our main characters go up to the bleachers and overlook this spectacle, which of course symbolizes the Roman bread and circuses, that is, civilization being distracted while Rome burns, but the fact that all these people continue to party and self-amuse in the face of a civil war no less, reminds us that old habits die hard. There's another scene where they go into this town that's kind of like the Twilight Zone, and it seems as though everybody has their blinders on and they're trying to block out the fact that a civil war is ongoing. They enter into an antique store, and the person working at the shop appears to be oblivious to what's going on in the world around them.
Pretty huge civil war going on all across America.
Oh, sure, but we just try to stay out.
This is an ongoing theme throughout the movie. There's going to be a lot of people who succumb to what psychologists call normalcy bias. They simply refuse to believe evidence that contradicts their worldview, usually to their own peril. You also see this in the classic apocalypse TV series, The Walking Dead. There's a town called Alexandria that exhibits the same psychological symptoms. Throughout these worlds, we see that there are different levels of chaos in different places. That is, there are green zones and there are red zones, and there's going to be different sets of rules no matter where you go. So the rules that apply to you in your place of origin may not be the same rules that apply when you reach your destination. Now, when I first seen the movie, the only scene that made everybody laugh out loud in the theater was when they offered to pay $300 Canadian and gas. This, of course, piqued the interest of the gun-wielding militiaman who was overseeing the gas station. Now, as unlikely as it might be that there's a future where Canadian dollars are actually sought after more than American ones, the main takeaway from this scene is that you have to have a means to barter with people, because there will come a point where cash will be trash, especially in a civil war scenario where nobody respects the Federal Reserve anymore. I would strongly recommend that you keep a little bit of cash on hand from multiple currencies from the countries that surround your own. This is going to create resilience in times of economic stress. Now, of course, you can go right to precious metals, gold and silver. But just remember, if you are throwing out gold coins anywhere, you might just put a target on your back. This is why in many countries that experience economic collapse, people are actually more likely to trade in jewelry, because there's a difference in me bringing you a gold necklace or a gold coin. If I'm bringing you a gold coin, there's a good chance I have more of those gold coins. Thus, you can potentially become a target. Another key takeaway from the film is that this thin veneer of civility that cloaks our world and creates the illusion that we are now intrinsically more ethical than our caveman predecessors is a complete facade. As I said in my initial review of the film, the scariest thing about this movie is that the lights are still on, because that creates the illusion that all is well. This makes the violence that's presented in the film far more startling for most people. Another takeaway from the film is to use analog tools. There's a scene in the film where the young aspiring photojournalist Jessie is telling Lee how she prefers the analog technology and processing her own images. Compare this to Lee's dependence on digital technology. Now, while there is a place for digital media in survival and preparedness, namely in terms of loading up memory cards with all types of survival books, literature, and videos, how-to guides on how to do things when the grid goes down, the tried and true methods that don't require the grid are going to be these analog systems. Lesson number 21.6. Don't use elevators because you might get stuck in them. All the more importance of making sure that you can walk up 20 flights of stairs. If you can't walk up 20 flights of stairs with your luggage, you're probably not ready for the apocalypse. Lesson number 33. The president, he won't be in Air Force One or a deep underground Raven Rock bunker complex. Nope, he's just going to be chilling in the White House, waiting for all the militias to come and kill him. Because Hollywood. But in all seriousness, while I think that on the whole this movie is very plausible, I did think that part about how the president was just waiting to be killed in the White House, I did find that a little bit hard to believe. In fact, in a way, it almost makes you question, was the president really that tyrannical at all? Or was he in fact a man of integrity that went down with the sinking ship? And were the groups who were united against the president in that film, were they actually the bad guys? I guess we'll never know. And that really is the whole point of the film. Another lesson learned from the movie is worry about disguises. There's an iconic scene in the film where a group of men in military fatigues can be seen unloading a truckload of dead bodies into a mass grave. Now, the young people within our protagonist group have the audacity to suggest that maybe they're with the government. Sammy, as we previously talked about, knew otherwise. Now, the key takeaway here is that just because somebody is in a uniform, be it a police uniform, first responder, or military, doesn't mean they actually are a part of the organization they claim to represent. If they are unloading a bunch of non-uniform bodies into a giant mass grave, there's a good chance they're not good guys. Now, this game of Mr. Dress-Up can also be used to your advantage. There's another scene where Lee gives Jesse a high-vis vest. Here she is communicating the importance of the gray man strategy. And I will always say, every prepper needs a high-vis vest in their vehicle at all times. Not because you're planning on doing any construction work, but because it's going to make you look official in different types of situations. And it may just be your key to getting access to certain places. I would probably go a step further and add a hard hat while you're at it. If we do enter a situation where things are seemingly unfolding like they are in the movie, it may not even be a bad idea to have some clothes marked press or a helmet marked press just at the ready, because you never know. Now, we don't know the exact date that this movie takes place. Based on the technology and the state of the cities that we see in the film, we are to presume that it takes place in the present. However, there are certain references to events like the Antifa massacre, which of course we know haven't happened yet. So we must presume that this is sometime in the future. And the fact that technology has not advanced may be a sign that in this universe, America is in an arrested state of development. Now, there's a scene in the movie where our main characters are driving through this forest that is burning down. This is a reminder that after the grid goes down, the resources needed to mitigate these natural disasters simply will not exist. There's not going to be enough manpower and material in order to fight these wildfires, and they are going to rage on undeterred. If you live in a bug-out location or an acreage, you absolutely need a fire plan. Early on in the film, at the gas station scene, there's a couple guys who are hung up and they're bleeding out. They're still alive, but they're badly beaten. And the gunman who has these guys captive said, "Yeah, I used to go to high school with that guy." The lesson to be learned here is that fratricide is the #1 killer on the planet. And I don't just mean brother killing brother, I mean countrymen killing countrymen. What they're trying to communicate here is that when this American game theory reaches its climax, you won't be able to trust anybody. An immutable law of societal collapse that I discovered is that your acquaintances are not your friends are not your family, and your family, well, you're stuck with them, so you better keep them in check. Going back to the infantile nature of American culture and how it will get you killed, you remember that scene in the movie where Wagner Moura's rowdy journalist friends pull up alongside them along the highway and one guy jumps out of the window while the cars are still moving and enters the other vehicle, and then Jesse, the young reporter, does the same thing in the opposite direction? What happened after they sped off around the corner? Well, before arguably the worst part of the movie unfolds, Sammy says something doesn't feel right about this. And indeed he was right, because these antics ultimately got them killed. And lastly, there's a tragic reality to this film. What kept our main character Lee alive throughout the majority of the film and her journalistic career as America burned around her was her ability to remain indifferent and impartial to what was going on and just do her job. When Sammy died, it all caught up to her and she started becoming very emotional. In effect, she was rehumanized. This rehumanization led to her saving the young reporter's life, Jesse, which of course was foreshadowed earlier in the movie when Lee ironically told Jesse that she would photograph her if she died. The main lesson to take away here, and if there's one silver lining at all, is that while it's true that Lee's emotion got her killed, it's also true that it allowed her to save the life of her protege and carry the journalistic torch through another generation of chaos and collapse. If you want to survive, it's important that you remain completely detached from what's going on around you. If you want to thrive in a civilization, that entails sacrifice. There's a time to live and there's a time to die. Now, there's other more generic mistakes that our characters made, the same ones they do in every movie. They should have stayed off the main roads. They should have used the back roads if possible. In spite of the fact that they were trying to be objective peacekeeping journalists, they should have probably had a firearm just in case. They should have brought more supplies, etc., etc., etc. Let me know in the comment section below what you think the characters did right and what did they do wrong. And once again, go and check out my analysis of the hidden meanings of the movie Civil War through the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Canadian Prepper out.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.